All right, good morning. Would you help? This is before Super Bowl, a special morning where I always like to stop and talk a little bit about food because it's the perfect opportunity to do that. And so we have a very special guest who has agreed to come once again, good friend of mine, part of the Keys family and the Keys group. Would you help welcome Michelle Keys? Michelle, come.
Thank you.
And just to let you know, he is over there. Carson, that's Carson, her son, over there working the camera. He is still working diligently. And is Kevin here?
Kevin's in there.
I'm looking for Kevin. There's Kevin, and is Isabella with you, or is she going to class?
Might be outside.
Okay, she's going to class. Her family is here to come help support her because they know I'm a really bad interviewer. And no, I'm serious. This is great. I asked Michelle if she would come and do a few Super Bowl snacks and food because Joni and I were in their small group a couple of years ago when we were doing the Daniel plan, and it's where she got me hooked on sugar snap peas as a snack.
Great snack.
And it is a great snack. And but I also learned a lot about using the right ingredients and trying not to totally wipe out your food pantry, so that there was nothing in there, that
Right.
wasn't a good idea.
It's a journey, one
Right.
step at a time.
One step at a
One
time.
step at a time. Take one thing out, just like in football. You're going to pull somebody off the field, you got to put somebody back on the field.
That's true. That's
So,
true. So, in fact, one of the things that I always loved that you used to say was if you don't enjoy it, you're probably not going to eat it.
Absolutely.
And so what I like is your idea is to make good stuff, healthy stuff, but also stuff that tastes good.
Yes, it's
That's
got to
my
be
favorite.
fun. It's got to taste good, and it has to be sustainable. To be going on and on, you can't just eat this way for a couple weeks, and we see that a lot today, up and down, but sustainable substitutes
Right.
and making it fun.
So what did you bring for us for the Super Bowl?
So we're all about those substitutes. Wings are an absolute Super Bowl staple. However, a lot of times
Do those look good?
They
Oh,
look
yeah.
good. They taste good. I think everybody can agree. We did not douse these in hydrogenated oils. What we did was we put them in our oven on broil, and we just crisp them up, let the natural fats come out of the chicken and coat them, and then we used Frank's Red Hot. So if you look at the labels, you want to read labels and you want to understand. So minimal ingredients is your key. And we douse those with Frank's Red Hot. There's also another recipe for my husband's secret barbecue sauce is on the website as well.
Oh, okay. You're giving that away. Huh?
I'm giving that away today.
Okay, that's good.
So here's my Super Bowl strategy for all of you guys. Healthy fat, there's a lot of media on that. Healthy fat is good for our brains. Brains are 60% fat. So here's my tip for today. Two things. You want to go ahead and grab a handful of nuts or two, and they're called Sicilian spiced olives. The recipe's on my site as well. But those two things have higher content of fat, feeding your brain, helping you to make better choices when all the other stuff comes out.
Okay,
Slow
so you're being
down.
smarter about
Being smarter
Okay,
about
that's
it.
good.
Slow down. Hold the plate.
I love olives, too. Olives are one of my favorites.
You either like them or you don't. But I did transform my neighbor from an olive hater to an olive lover. So in the first service, Mr. Joe had spoken about being a part of a narrow gate. And basically, that's what I think we do with our family, helping to serve your family. We want y'all to join us in being a narrow gator, as I say. Because the broad way, it leads to destruction. If we do what everybody else is doing, we know that that's a road that leads to destruction. So we want to feed our bodies well, fuel them, use it properly. We have a brie right here that's just topped with 100% maple syrup, and we have crackers that you'd actually make, and convenience is a big deal, right?
It is.
So we want to make things convenient for you and your family by giving you tips and tricks. These crackers take probably less time to make than if you were out, had to jump in the car, go to the store, grab them, and come back. So that's a good thing. There's a white chili here, chicken chili, made with some hearty greens. This is delicious. I think you've had this at small group one time.
Okay.
I think you have.
Okay.
White beans, and there's nothing wrong with quality red meat, but this is just an alternative. And anybody in here like nachos? It's one of my favorites.
Nachos.
So nachos is my Super Bowl specialty, and of course the base is corn chips. So H-E-B, our local grocery store, has a great brand, and this one here is, they have red quinoa and flax. So while you're eating your corn chips, and they have awesome labels on them like the USDA organic and the GMO-free label. What those things mean is that it's quality food. And rather than getting out of bed on Monday morning and dragging and all kinds of, tired and tummy upset, you can bounce into whether your team wins or loses, you can bounce into the office feeling great. You're not going to feel sluggish when you're fueling your body properly.
Now, are Doritos, do they make a good
They make
non-GMO?
great kindling.
Okay.
Doritos make great kindling.
I know they make good commercials, so I didn't know
They make
that.
great commercials.
Okay,
You're not
they
going to
make great
see
commercials.
this, but you know what? It's okay. And it's all about, I have to change the way you think before you change your behavior. You have to change the way you think. And I always say every bite you take is feeding or fighting disease. It's Super Bowl Sunday. We have to adhere to that 80-20 rule. But if you can fuel yourself a little better, because that was the key to this series, better.
Yeah.
And you're not being better than anybody else. You're just being better than you were yesterday.
And I told Michelle that I saw a new statistic that they said 50% of cancer in our culture can be prevented. It's preventable if we would just learn to eat better, need to lose a little bit of weight, and then stop smoking, which really messed me up.
Smoking,
I know, so.
It's 2016, people smoking. And so cancer, heart disease, and diabetes, those are really up there, and they're all inflammation-based. So what we're going to do is we're just going to lower the inflammation, create a great environment in our body. And I have a pretty good relationship with the HEB right down the street, and I told them, listen, I'm going to send everybody from Stonebridge in here. So these sold out last time, so you might want to get there quick. And they have pre-chopped things that, again, make it easy, make it convenient for you. So you layer that up with some good quality organic dairy and cilantro and onion, and enjoy. There's also, this is interesting, the way you feel while you're eating something, because your brain has a lot to do with everything you do, the way you feel when you're eating something, it actually makes a difference. So enjoy. Today's Super Bowl. Enjoy your treats, but be mindful, and instead of being like, I gotta go on a diet tomorrow, and just enjoy it. Have a positive, healthy attitude, and you'll feel better on Monday morning.
Now, my wife is the one that really prepares, and in fact, my struggle as a guy, maybe a lot of guys do this way, is just the convenience thing.
Absolutely.
Because it's so easy, just, pull up and buy something, pick up something, go see Ronald McDonald, and, it's just a lot easier. But one of the things that's happened with us is we've changed what we eat, and Joni is really the one that sticks looking at the labels.
Yes.
And if I don't have my glasses, I can't read them anyway. Even with my glasses, I can't read the labels a lot of times. And but she's done that. But what I've noticed is we cook a lot more. We do a lot of our own preparation now because
which is key.
Yeah, because
which is key.
Most of the things you buy that are healthier don't have preservatives in them and things
Correct.
like that.
And you can save yourself a lot of time if you don't have to read the label. Choose things that don't have a label. So that's a whole food way of eating. And what you guys are doing is by prepping in advance, you're creating your own convenience. And I think that that's really important, especially with young families. You want to involve your family in the meal planning, in the grocery shopping. If you've ever seen us at the HEB, we have walkie-talkies and 3 carts. 1/3 of the time, we're in, we're out. So you want to involve them in the whole process and make it fun. Nobody wants to do anything that's not fun.
And I notice when y'all come home that it's not over yet. The prep still goes on with everybody when you get home.
Yes, I call that my valid shop and chop. And so I shop on one day and we prep our food. I like to say I prepare it to be eaten instead of wasted, because we throw out so much food. We don't anymore, but I noticed that was a huge turning point, preparing the food to be eaten and not wasted. And then on Saturday mornings, it's a fun family event for us. I call it Sinatra Saturdays because we play Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. I have an Italian background, so that's where that comes from. Eventually, my kids are going to rule me out with that music, and they're going to be like, we're going to listen to what I want to listen to. And it doesn't really matter. That's a great way to bring your children in the kitchen. Put music on that they like. And then ask them to grab some celery or chop some celery, and bit by bit, one step at a time, you'll get there and just enjoy life and taking it one step at a time.
And Joni and I, we do it together. She's going to negate that part, but I mean, we do. I bring the grocery bags in.
Yeah.
I help unload
You
some
help
of
eat.
them. She tells me, gives me assignments, what to clean, what to do. She gets me going and all that. and
That's wonderful
we've
because
learned to do it together.
I think that cooking is not a spectator sport. I think that it is a team sport. And when you have more people in there together, it lessens the work, which makes it easier and more convenient. If you think about, if you have a family of 4 and everybody does a recipe, preps for that week, you have something to eat within 15 to 20 minutes every night of the week, and it's a fraction of the work because you had just a little bit of help.
One of our in-laws, my son-in-law comes from a big family, 6 kids.
Wow.
And one of the things that we noticed and we really loved about them is when we go to their house in Wisconsin, all the kids participate in the prep and they all participate in the cleanup and all. And
That's
it's not,
wonderful.
they don't ask them to do it. They've just learned that this is just what we do as a family.
Sure.
And we love that about them.
And some people, some moms get grumpy or, well, what's wrong with her? She just did everything.
By herself.
Pitch in, and it makes for a happier family. And we have I always say I'm so thankful my meatballs can't talk because we have really, really great conversations rolling meatballs in my house.
Oh, that's great.
So.
And one last thing. I asked Michelle if she would bring her book, and she did. In fact, there's a table outside if you'd like to get one of her books. It's called The Keys, Ingredients, Your Holiday Table. So
the first service was very receptive. We're almost sold out, but
okay.
of course, we'll get more in.
I will sell my copy for 3 times.
I love it.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yours is already autographed, and Joni already has it.
Oh,
so we
good.
can't do that.
Okay.
But this was a family project, and if you'll see inside, my children wrote some of the recipes. My husband's written some of the recipes. This was a family project and truly a way for our family to serve yours. In our journey with all of this food, we've just really learned a lot, and we want to make it quick and easy. This
works for me because like pumpkin pie bites, chocolate cake.
Absolutely.
I mean, all the things. Somebody brought me this past week. In fact, it was Jason Oldfinger, but I'm not going to tell you who did it. But brought me by a chocolate cake I guess it was last Sunday. He and his son came by and dropped by, and I actually got a piece of it before Joni gave it away to the neighbors. But I actually got some. It was really good too.
So people are like, "Oh, don't look at what I'm eating, and don't do this, and don't do that." And I said, "Well, I'm not anti-cookie, anti-cake, anti-pie, but I want you to know that what you're putting into the cookie, cake, and pie matters, and you have to be fighting disease rather than feeding it." And I speak a lot in the community, and I spoke to our school on this week, and then I just told them, I said, "This isn't the last time you're going to see me, so when you see me next in the grocery store, please don't pretend like you don't know me, or jump in front of your cart and be like, hey, I'm here, we are here, our family's here to help you, and I'm not judging what's in your cart. That's between you and your family. I care a lot about what's in my cart."
That's good.
So just want you all to know, and it's one step at a time, and just take your time with it, and of course, involve your family and have fun.
All right, sounds great. Would you thank Michelle for coming and sharing with us?
Thanks,
Michelle.
Thank you.
Oh, here comes my assistant. Hold on for it. Dun, 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 dun. He's going to his office with that, just to let y'all know. That's what keeps the music program going. So, something like that. Okay, so we're going to talk about just for a few minutes about having fun and enjoying your time, and especially for Super Bowl weekend. I thought it was a good thing to do. In fact, one of the principles that she talks about and that we talked about was, like I said, if you don't enjoy it, you're probably not going to eat it. So that's me. I mean, I don't eat things that I don't like to eat. So, you learn how to cook and do things. And life is sort of the same way. If life just becomes, hard and a drudgery and you don't find things that you enjoy, it's difficult in life. In fact, I still remember my dad telling the story of when he left home at 16 years old, went into the shipyards because World War II was coming, and he decided he was going to be rich, but he had to work every day because he got paid time and a half on Saturday and double on Sunday. So he worked 7 days a week, got paid for 8.5 days. You say, that's a pretty good deal. Except that he figured something out. He figured out, I'm not going to survive if I do this. This is not going to work. I can't live like this. There's something that is missing in my life. And I think that, for some of us, especially if you have a strong work ethic, sometimes we have a strong religious ethic that might battle against this, that when we relax, when we, take time off, when we decide this is leisure time, or we're going to, enjoy time with our friends. Sometimes we have strange feelings that come up with this, right? Sometimes we feel guilty. Sometimes we feel like, I need to be more productive. I still remember last year going to Chick-fil-A's headquarters in Atlanta, and, I know that you think, well, they have some kind of religious connotation about taking Sunday off. They don't. It was all about, for them, that everybody needs a day off. The people that work for us need a day off. It's a healthy thing. What could be more logical than taking Sunday off, which traditionally had been taken off? And I still remember when they were in huge debt in the early 80s and needed more business, and advisors were coming in and saying, you need to open on Sunday, that they had to go and have a real heart session and talk about it, and they just decided, you know what, if we don't make it, we don't make it. We're still going to do what we do, and we're going to focus on the things that we've always done well. And it worked out really well for them. I say that because, there's this push sometimes that says, I can't take a day off. I can't take any time off. And the truth is, it's really a very unhealthy thing for us. The term we tend to use is this term called recreation, right? Now, when I think of recreation, I think of going out and playing, or playing a sport or something like that. Do you think that way? But, recreation really comes from, that's the reason I hyphenated it, from the idea of being recreated, of being rejuvenated, of somehow finding a reason to get back up and do the things that you do tomorrow really well. I was reading, Tim Hansel has a book called When I Relax, I Feel Guilty. And I was reading in his book, I thought this was good. He said in the Greek, if you like Greek, he said in the Greek, the word for work actually means without leisure. That's what the word means. In fact, it's the word that in the Greek would be for leisure with a prefix on it that would mean to take it away. So take away leisure. That's how in the Greek, that's how the word came about. Interesting, the word for leisure in the Greek is a word that has turned into, for us, the word school or scholarship or scholastic. That's where we get the word from. It's the word skole in the Greek. So it gives this idea that he points out. I think he's exactly right. That means that leisure, the time that you take off, is all about learning and growing and reevaluating and taking a break and a time to look at things more clearly. So that when you're without that kind of time, when you're working all the time, you never get a chance to look at it clearly and to evaluate it clearly and say, what am I doing? And why is this important? And should I be doing these things? And you need that time to stop and to reflect and to back up. And so I just want to give you this morning, Super Bowl time, I know, but I want to give you four reasons why I think it's a good idea for you to take that time off. First of all, it's a way for you to learn and grow. That's really at the heart of it, I think, of what even God commands us, because it's in that time that we get a chance to reflect. Here's what it says about Jesus and his disciples, his apostles in Mark. It says, the apostles gathered together with Jesus, and they reported to him all that they had done and taught. And he said to them, catch this is Jesus, he says to them, come away by yourselves to a secluded place, and say this with me, and what? Rest a while. Take a break. Don't keep going and going and going and going and going without stopping and reflecting and thinking about the things that we have done. What do these things mean? Why are these things important? Do they really count? I think it's a good word. In fact, it goes on to say, for there were many people coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat. They went away in the boat to a secluded place by themselves. They just got away. And it gives Jesus a chance to teach them, to say what these things mean, so that they could look at them and they could honestly make better decisions. When they come back, they could absorb all that was there in the good things that they had done. I think it's an important thing. Also, let me read for you. I've misplaced my glasses somewhere. Maybe I can read without them. I guess I can. Here we go. I may need them. Oh, Elsie, I may make you read this instead. This is from Tim's book also, and in this he actually talks about, or he describes this as being from a friar from Nebraska. I don't know what that means. Did you catch that? A friar from Nebraska. I mean, like a monastery friar from Nebraska. I didn't know they had things like that in Nebraska. So if anybody's from Nebraska, you can tell me later. But anyway, okay, it's not funny. I'm sorry. I thought it was going to be, okay. I don't know why, but this is what supposedly he writes. This is unknown exactly who wrote it, but this supposedly, I like this. This is pretty good. He said, if I had my life to do over again, I'd try to make more mistakes next time. I like that. I think, he's just saying, I would relax. I would limber up. I would be sillier than I have been on this trip. That means in this life. I know very few things I would take seriously. I would take more trips. I would be crazier. I would climb more mountains, swim more rivers, and watch more sunsets. I would do more walking and looking. I would eat more ice cream. I don't know if that works with, I would eat more ice cream and less beans. I would think Nebraska it would have been beef, but that makes me wonder. I would have more troubles and fewer, I would have more actual troubles and fewer imaginary ones. That's pretty good. You see, I'm one of those people who lives life prophylactically. That means trying to protect yourself all the time, trying to prevent bad things from happening. And he's, I'm sorry, I can't even read the next word. And sensibly, hour after hour, day after day. Oh, I've had my moments, and if I had to do them over again, I'd have more of them. In fact, I tried to have nothing else, just moments, one after another, instead of living so many years ahead each day. I've been one of those people who never go anywhere without a thermometer, a hot water bottle, a gargle, a raincoat, aspirin, and a parachute. If I had to do it over again, I would go places, do things, travel lighter than I have. If I had my life to live over again, I would start barefooted earlier in the spring and stay that way later in the fall. I would play hooky more. I wouldn't make such good grades except by accident. I would ride on more merry-go-rounds. I'd pick more daisies. Now, I know you might say, I don't know that I would agree with all of those. That's okay. But what he's saying is sometimes we take life way too seriously. We're way too concerned about the mistakes that we make that we don't take chances that we should take. In fact, one of the things I've noticed is when people get to the end of their life and they reflect back, most of the time they reflect back on the things that they did not do, right? They say, here was my problem. I didn't take a chance. I didn't say the things I should have said. I didn't go out of my way to take a chance at this or to do something for someone else. Short term, what people do is they regret the things that they did do. But long term, they regret the things that they never took a shot at, that they never really went after. So I think it's time, leisure, for us to reflect, to grow, to think about things. I think you need that time. Second thing is I think it's also a way for you to celebrate your work. Because there's a time where you need to stop and you need to look at what you have done, what you have accomplished. When you celebrate those things, it gives you a chance to say, then I'm going to do more. These are good things. I can make more things happen. In fact, if you go back into and look in the Old Testament, there seems to be this idea with God in creation, that on the seventh day, God creates, and on the seventh day, what does he do? It says he rests. He looks at it all. He takes it all in. I don't think that God needed leisure time. I think God does that for us, and I think he commands us to take that time so that we would also reflect and we would be able to celebrate and we would look at what we have done. And we would also then talk to God about those things because it's his idea that we would be this way. Here's what it says in Exodus. This is where you have the Ten Commandments laid out in the 20th chapter. And the one that I'm talking about, the fourth commandment, says, remember to observe the Sabbath. The Sabbath was a special day that was not supposed to be like every other day. It was different. It was the last day, the seventh day of the week. By keeping it holy, you have 6 days each week for your ordinary work. That means the things you have to do, and you have to do a lot of things, and you go after those things. But the seventh day is a Sabbath, a Sabbath day of rest, dedicated to the Lord your God. He says, On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons, your daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you. And then it goes on to say, for in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, and the sea, and everything in them. But on the seventh day, say it with me, he took a break from it. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. So, I think that God institutes it. He puts it in. He calls us to a Sabbath day of rest, a day to stop and to reflect. And I know that technically Sunday is the first day of the week, but that's why we come and we worship Him. It changes our focus. It changes how we reflect on things. I hope that, on Sunday, I hope you get a chance to spend time with your family, with your friends, as well as some alone time to be able to do that, because He says that it is very important to do that. This is why this day is set apart. It is different than the other days. It is a holy day that is set apart for that reason. We also have other holy days, don't we? And those holy days are set apart so we would reflect on very specific things that God has done for us and that we are involved in. And so God does the same thing. He gives us a chance to take the break, to reflect, to connect with the things that are really important to us. Here's the third one. I think it's also a way to remember God's goodness to you. If you go to the book of Deuteronomy, I told you before that the book of Deuteronomy is Moses, his messages, his sermons. So in Deuteronomy, he's talking about the same thing. He goes through the Ten Commandments also there, but Moses gives a different explanation for this same commandment, the fourth commandment. Here's Moses' explanation in Deuteronomy to why God called us to a Sabbath day of rest. He says, remember that you were once slaves in Egypt, but the Lord your God brought you out with His strong hand and His powerful arm. That's part of the reflection. That you are to remember that because, of course, this is after creation, that there was a day that you were captive, that you had been taken, and God is the one who has set you free. And this is a chance for you to reflect on that, because it changes everything when you look at life that way, when you understand life as being something that God has done for you and that God has been good to you. He says, that is why the Lord your God has commanded you to rest on the Sabbath day, so that you would stop and you would look at it differently. You would remember. You would see things differently. And then let me give you the fourth one. In fact, this is going to take a little bit longer, so hold on to this one. Fourth one is, He gives us this, He calls us to this time so that we would become better people. And now this is a little after the 20th chapter in Exodus, but in the 23rd chapter of Exodus, He's expanding on a lot of things. In fact, there are a lot of things in the Old Testament that someone would say, I don't understand why God would say this or why they would do these things. But if you look at the Old Testament and you look at what He calls them to and the laws and the rules and what God tells them to do, you would see something amazing and powerful about the character of God Himself. And I think that when you look at some of these things, you see the same God that is reflected in the New Testament in the Old Testament. He's just even more clear and more revealed in the New Testament than the Old Testament. And let me show you this passage, because it's going to be a little long, but this is just a great passage. This is what it says in 23rd chapter. Now, you must not pass along false rumors. Let me say this again. You must not pass along false rumors. This is good reflection. This is who you're supposed to be. This is how you're supposed to live. I will admit to you, my tendency, or the reason I would pass along a false rumor, is because I think it is good for me, right? I think it helps my cause, or how I see things. I know that this sounds a little chastising. I mean it to be that way, and not just for you, but for me also. But if it's false, it's false. It's not supposed to come out of our mouth. It's not supposed to get by us without us saying, whoa, wait a minute. We're not going to go there, because we don't know that that's true. We don't know that. And even if it tends to fit your side, listen, you are doing damage to your side when you stick with false rumors. You're doing damage to your side, because God is a God of truth. God is a God of, is it right or is it wrong? And God absolutely expects us to have the same commitment whether it seems to help us or not. We are people who must, because of who he is, say, you know what, God is the God of truth. We will stick with what is true. And if it's false, listen, we're just not going to go there. I've had great friends who, because of their walk with God, their integrity, have been real inspirations for me. And especially the thing that sticks out in my mind with them is when they would never pass on a false rumor. They just won't go there. If someone says something, they know, no, it's not true, it's gossip, they just won't go there. And I always thought, man, there's integrity. You know, that's the way it should be. Because that's what God calls us to. Okay, I know it won't be that long on every point, but you must not cooperate with evil people by lying in the witness stand. You must not follow the crowd in doing wrong. And that's exactly what we end up doing when we pass on false rumors. The next verse he says, when you are called to testify in a dispute, do not be swayed by the crowd to twist justice. And do not slant your testimony in favor of a person just because that person, catch this, just because that person is, what does he say? Now, I would have thought, you know, I even had to tell you, I went back. I said, is that a mistranslation? You know, because it would seem like it would be just because that person is rich or is wealthy or is powerful. He actually says just because the person is poor, because we have a tendency to do that. To say, I know it's not right, but, you know, I feel sorry for someone, so I'm going to twist the truth. You don't help anyone when you do that. You make it more difficult for them. Because it says the truth gets twisted for you because of your situation. It's not good for anybody to live that way. Not good for me to live that way. You to live that way. It's not good for your kids to live that way. You don't twist the truth because they're your kids. You say, you know, and you say, well, you know, they're young and they're helpless. Still, you teach them to live by the truth. Okay, next one. He says, if you come upon your enemy's ox and donkey that is strayed away, take it back to its owners. Now, this is your enemy's ox and donkey. If you see that the donkey of someone who hates you has collapsed under its load, don't walk by. Instead, stop and help. Does that sound a lot like what Jesus taught his disciples? Sure it does. Sounds a lot like when Jesus, you know, talked about the Good Samaritan being on the road and him helping someone who was not even a part of his group. In fact, there were parts of groups that were enemies of one another. But here's a man who was in great need and who was beaten and was left dying, and he could not pass him by because it was the wrong thing to do. He had to do the right thing, the caring thing to do. This is exactly what he's saying. That kind of care and compassion coming out of our life comes out of our life because of what God himself has done and what he has taught us. And when we stop and we take time out, to reflect on that. You know what? This is the right way to live. This is the right reflection, you know, of who God is and how God himself, you know, calls us to live. Look at the next verse. He says, in a lawsuit, you must not deny justice to the poor. So he goes back there. Lawsuit, you know, just because someone is poor, they should not be denied justice. Be sure never to charge anyone falsely with evil. Never sentence an innocent or blameless person to death. For I never declare a guilty person to be innocent. Now that's not talking about, you know, God giving his life for us and taking our punishment upon himself, and we are declared innocent because he has taken our punishment. He is talking about, God does not look at someone who does the wrong thing, they are guilty, and say, you know, we'll just twist the truth and say they're innocent even though they're really not. That's what he's talking about. God is a God of justice. He has to be a God of justice. In fact, it's where a lot of people don't understand even the depths of what forgiveness really means. Forgiveness is not that God blows it off or just said, okay, we'll just say it was okay. It's God, you know, sending his son and Jesus taking the punishment for our sin so that he has taken the payment. It is costly. Real forgiveness is always, always costly. If you learn to forgive, it will cost you to forgive. You will have to absorb the weight of what you are forgiving upon yourself. But you do it because you realize he has done the same thing and taught me to do the same thing. Next verse he says, take no bribes. For a bribe makes you ignore something that you clearly see. A bribe makes even a righteous person twist the truth. And then he goes on to say, you must not oppose foreigners. You know what it's like to be a foreigner, for you yourselves were once foreigners in the land of Egypt. And then he says, plant and harvest your crops for 6 years. But let the land be renewed and lie uncultivated during the 7th year. So here's that idea of the Sabbath, the 7th. But in this case, he's doing it for the land. Now, it did not mean they didn't work on the 7th year. It just meant they rotated their fields and their crops. And he even goes and says, why? He says, then the poor among you harvest whatever grows on its own. Leave the rest for wild animals to eat. The same applies to your vineyards and to your olive groves. So it's this idea that of the land also helping those who didn't necessarily own it in their day. And then he says, you have 6 days each week for your ordinary work. But on the 7th day, you must stop working. This gives your ox and your donkey a chance to rest. In this case, your Ford, Chevy, whatever. But it gives it a chance to rest. It also allows your slaves and the foreigners living among you to be refreshed. So it's just a wise word for us. So we don't just live hustling and hurried and just going and going and going and going. And I still like the idea that it just calls us as we reflect to try to take on his own character, to just be, truthful people, to just be honest people that just say, listen, we look at it straight up. We're not trying to manipulate. We're not trying to make it into something that it's not, because, we believe that God presented as he really is, and if we follow him as he really is, that is more than enough. In fact, that is incredibly powerful, so that is what we will do. I have to tell you a little joke, because I knew this would be too serious for you. And no. I've heard a story of Art Browse. Y'all know who Art Browse is? The coach of Baylor, is that right? Where did he coach before? No, I won't go there. Art Browse, the coach of Baylor, and Art Browse had some of his assistant coaches go with him, and they were going to go hunting, and they went to an alumni, or they heard this guy was a great alumni, stopped by. They were going to hunt on his farm. He had a huge farm, stopped by. And Art said, let me go in and talk to him. And so, they stopped the truck that they were in, and he left the assistants in the truck, and he went into the house and talked to him. It was great. The guy loves Baylor, loved Coach Browse, all their program and everything. Told him, you're welcome to go hunt. I don't know what they were hunting, out there. And then Coach Browse decided on his way back, he said, I'm gonna get my young assistants. I'm gonna pull a fast one on them. So he comes out, and he just comes out stomping up to the truck. He says, man, that guy, they said he was an alumni. He is just the worst, that I've ever seen. I mean, he said he hates Baylor. He thought we had done a terrible job. He couldn't believe, the quarterback decisions we'd made. I mean, he just goes on and on and on. He says, I'm just a mind, to do something. Oh, I forgot to tell you, the guy blew the joke. The guy in there, the guy in the house asked him, he said, can you do me one favor while you're here? He said, I have a donkey. He's old. He needs to be put down. He's in great pain. I just can't do it. Could you do that? And Coach Browse is like, I can't do that. And finally he agreed to it. So he's going to really set him up with this. So he walks out. He does this. Boy, I'm doing good with this joke, aren't I? And he comes out and he takes his rifle and he says, I'm just a mind to go out and shoot that man's donkey, because how bad he was to us and just what he thinks of us. And he stomps off with his rifle. He goes behind the barn. And he puts down the donkey, and he's walking back. He's kind of chuckling, thinking, man, those guys must be absolutely just shocked, like, what is going on? But on his way back, he hears several other shots. Boom, boom, boom. And about that time, the other coaches come running around the other side of the barn, and they say, quick, jump in. We got 2 cows and a horse. So, okay, it would have been a lot funnier if I hadn't blown the first part of the joke. It just, man, that's leisure, right? We can make, that's right, second service would be better. Hey, so y'all come back. We can laugh. We can make fun of some things because they point to the way that we tend to want to twist things and do things because there's what makes it funny is, we would do things like that, at times. But it reminds us as we reflect, God is the God of truth. And God is a God of great power. And God doesn't need us to do everything. In fact, he reminds us of how we are drawn to him because of what he has done. And so we're going to celebrate together what God has done for us and how he has set us free when he sent his son Jesus Christ into this world. We're going to celebrate the Lord's Supper. And as our ushers come, would you bow your head with me as we prepare? Heavenly Father, we thank you. You understand us better than we understand ourselves, and that's why you even give us commands. You ask us to do things that sometimes we're not even sure why. It doesn't necessarily seem to fit sometimes how we think things should be done. But you do them because they're good for us. And even as we remember the 2,000 years ago, the disciples being around Jesus, and Jesus gathering with them to prepare them for his death, his sacrifice, that had to be terribly confusing to them. It didn't seem to fit the way they thought the world should be or how they thought everything should work out. But even then, they were learning to trust him, and that he would be faithful if they would just learn to be obedient, to do the things that he asked them to do. So Lord, as we stop, and that's what we do, we stop. We get away from the normal things that we do to listen to you, to learn from you, to reflect on all that we have done in the past week, and to remember all that you did for us, your great goodness for us, as we stop and we reflect on those things. Lord, we do pray that you would teach us, help us, stretch us, cause us to learn, and cause us to grow. In Jesus' name we pray.